I used to believe that after 12 relentless years of dedication, one day someone in that room would finally stand up and say, "Thank you, Rebecca. Because of you, this company survived 3 crises." But all I got was laughter. Not mine, not with me. It was the mocking laugh of a 30 something man who became CEO simply because his last name was Whitford. The meeting took place on a Monday morning in the strategy room on the 23rd floor, the place where every 5 year plan was born. I was leading the presentation. The first slide lit up: supply chain optimization and green transition roadmap. I talked about AI, smart warehouse grids, and the reduction of CO2 emissions through hybrid transport models. The room was silent, not out of boredom, but focus. I knew that silence. I'd owned it 100 times before until he walked in. No knock, no announcement. Ethan Whitford, the new CEO, the chairman's son, wearing a crisp white shirt, navy slacks, face glowing like he'd stepped out of a magazine shoot. He leaned against the wall, sipping a green smoothie I later learned was pistachio, scanning the room like he was choosing from a menu. No one dared interrupt me, except him. "I don't get it," Ethan said, voice weary, like talking to a child who couldn't keep up. "We're talking about optimization, but keeping the same old system?" I turned to him, still smiling politely. "We're building a controlled transition plan to make sure the supply chain isn't disrupted in the first phase." He nodded slowly, then walked over, took the laser pointer right from my hand like it already belonged to him. No one said a word. He looked at the room, then dropped it. "Keeping people like you is like carrying dead weight on a ship, and I don't intend to let Ether slow down because of nostalgia." For a second, I thought I misheard, but no, that was exactly what he said. Clear, sharp, in front of 30 people, executives, department heads, and even the 2 new hires I'd brought in last week. No one laughed. No one moved. Just the sound of the air conditioning and the thick silence of discomfort. I stood still, remote in hand, eyes locked on him. My face didn't move. My heart raced, but not out of fear. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was cold. The kind of cold that creeps under your skin when the temperature drops below 50 and you're standing there in a thin dress. Ethan sat back, crossed his legs, and gestured for me to continue. But I didn't. I closed my laptop, calmly slipped it into my bag. People's eyes followed me, cautious, awkward, full of pity they didn't dare show. Someone tried to speak, but couldn't. I just nodded once, a silent bow, and walked out. When the door closed behind me, I stopped for 1 second, not to think, but to memorize the sound of that room, the place I'd once been essential to. Now just a footnote in their history of innovation. I didn't go back to my desk, didn't check my inbox. I went straight to the lobby, through the glass revolving doors, into the autumn sunlight. The receptionist asked if I needed a car. I shook my head. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just rolled down the window, let the wind rush through my hair, and one thought filled my mind. Fine. If I'm the dead weight, let's see how long you stay afloat without me. I walked out of those revolving doors as if I'd never existed there at all. No one followed. No one looked back. And I wondered, if a person like me disappears after 12 years and no one says a word, did I ever really exist in that place? The wind brushed through the trees lining the street. I walked for a while, no car, no rush, just the feeling of pavement under my feet, reminding me I was still here, still me. And if you're hearing this right now, I'm curious, where are you listening from? Driving to work? Sitting in a coffee shop somewhere in Chicago, Austin, maybe New York? Have you ever walked out of a room and felt a part of your life stay behind? I just did. And strangely enough, the only thing I feel is quiet. Not the quiet of defeat, but the quiet before the storm I'm about to unleash. I didn't go home that day. I drove around the city with no direction, no destination. Austin was warmer than usual for an early autumn afternoon. People filled the streets, sitting at outdoor cafes, sipping cold brew and talking investments, as if the world would keep spinning without anyone having to hold it together. And me? I had just been thrown out of a system I'd spent more than a decade building. A woman labeled slow, outdated, and useless by a man who'd only lived through a few real-world summers. I parked by Town Lake, where few people go in the middle of the week. I opened the door, sat on the edge of the trunk, and stared at the ripples on the water. Runners passed me like I was invisible. Maybe that was the first time in years I was truly alone. My phone buzzed 3 times. A message from Trisha, Operations Deputy. You okay? I looked at the screen, unsure how to answer. Another message popped up from my mother. Take a break for a while, honey. You need it. I laughed softly. Of course. To everyone else, quitting a job means resting. But I knew better. Ethan didn't just want me gone. He wanted me erased, forgotten, like I'd never existed in the company's history. I drove home around 4 in the afternoon. The house was quiet, as always. I'd lived alone for nearly 8 years, ever since the divorce. My ex-husband, Mark, was a good man. He just couldn't handle being married to someone who always chose work first. I couldn't blame him. Nights when I came home at 11, eating dinner with cold coffee and inventory reports, there wasn't much left to save a marriage. I took off my shoes, walked into the kitchen, opened the wine cabinet, and poured a glass of Merlot. Not to get drunk, just to feel like I still controlled at least one thing. I sat in the armchair and opened my laptop. The severance package from Aether had arrived in my inbox. Clean, polished, legally sound. 6 months' pay plus a quarterly bonus for last year's operational performance. I skimmed the numbers, then scrolled down to the terms. Nothing unusual, except for one line that made me stop. Rebecca Hayes agrees not to engage in any business activities, directly or indirectly, in competition with Aether Dynamics for 12 months. I smiled, but not the kind that reaches your eyes. I smiled because they were afraid of me, afraid enough to add that line. I smiled because Ethan, despite mocking me in front of everyone, still felt the need to build a fence around his empire, as if he knew, when a woman's pride and intellect are both bruised, silence is only temporary. I couldn't sleep that night, not because I was sad, but because my mind had started working again, like an old engine coming back to life after years of rust. Numbers appeared in my head, contract clauses, logistics routes, warehouse maps, regional distribution models. It was all still there. I took notes, typed a few old names into LinkedIn, searched for industry updates, and then one name appeared: Voltline Logistics, a mid-sized transport company. Not too big, not too small, struggling through its third consecutive quarter in the red. But here's the thing. Voltline handled nearly 60% of Aether's renewable materials shipments over the past 2 years. I'd negotiated with them myself. I knew their system like the back of my hand. And if memory served me right, their contract with Aether was set to expire next quarter. I took another sip of wine. The taste blurred, but my mind was crystal clear. You know that moment when you realize you don't need to shout, slam doors, or seek revenge to reclaim your power? You just need to make one precise move. That night, I wrote an email, short, simple, to someone I'd met 2 years ago at an industry conference, Miles Carter, investment representative at Westbridge Capital. The subject line had only 6 words: a new opportunity in a familiar field. No one needs to know what I did that night. All that matters is this. The storm began with a glass of wine, a single email, and a woman who refused to stay forgotten. Miles Carter replied to my email the next morning at 6:38, the kind of man who never sleeps a full 8 hours. His response was short. Coffee? 8 a.m. The old place. The old place was the Steam House, a quiet cafe tucked inside the industrial district on the south side of the city. The coffee was terrible, but the privacy was unmatched. It was where Miles and I first met, two people still trying to prove we deserved to be heard in rooms filled with richer men. I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, no sugar, old habit. Miles walked in 3 minutes later, same untucked shirt, loose tie, and that half smile of his that always suggested he knew one more thing than anyone else in the room. So, he said as he sat down, you got thrown out? I smirked. Thrown would be polite. I was launched, but I landed on both feet. He nodded, didn't ask for details. Miles never asked too many questions. That's why I chose him. I opened my laptop, scrolled through the slides I'd finished the night before. Voltline's operation model, profit breakdowns, the root causes of their losses, and what I believed could change everything. I'm not here looking for a job, I said, meeting his eyes. I'm here to propose a deal. Miles set his cup down and tilted his head. I'm listening. I presented for 12 minutes. Steady, clear. I explained that Voltline was a slow ship, but a solid one, just needed someone willing to cut loose the extra anchors. I spoke about Aether's dependence on their current logistics chain, the one I'd built myself, which meant I knew exactly how it would react if someone altered the flow. You want to buy Voltline? He asked. No, I said. I want you to buy it, and I'll run it. Miles laughed. And in return, I want 40% equity, no board seat, just full operational control for 18 months. If it doesn't turn a profit, I walk away, no compensation. He leaned back, silent for a few seconds. Then he asked, softly but pointedly, Rebecca, is this personal or is it business? I looked straight at him. Both, I said, but the personal part happens to be the perfect fuel for a smart deal. Miles didn't say another word. He nodded, took out his phone, and texted someone, probably his fund assistant. Then he set the cup down and extended his hand. I like deals with clear motives, he said, especially when the motive walks in wearing heels and already talks like she's won. We shook hands. No paperwork that day, none needed. We'd worked together before. We both knew that if words weren't worth anything, contracts wouldn't save us. 3 days later, I received an official offer from Voltline. Miles and Westbridge acquired 52% of the company at 18% below market value, thanks to its poor financials. I stepped into Voltline's headquarters on a gray Wednesday morning, titled Interim COO. The building sat in the eastern suburbs, old, musty, printers gasping for air. No glowing logo, no uniformed receptionist. A man named Dave greeted me with a look caught between skepticism and hope. I didn't say much. I just shook hands, asked names, listened to stories they'd stopped bothering to tell management. And at the end of the day, standing in a small, worn conference room, I said only one thing. I won't promise this will be easy, but I promise one thing. If we go down, it'll be fighting, not surrendering. No one clapped, but no one left early. That night, I sat alone in the former CEO's office. The family photos were gone. The framed diplomas, too. No calendar filled with meetings. Just me, a laptop, and a blank sheet of paper. I wrote the first line. Week 1. Audit all contracts and operational processes. Then I stopped, looked around the silent room, and whispered to myself. They called me dead weight. Fine. They forgot that even weight can become a pillar, and I've stood alone long enough to know I don't need anyone to hold me up. The first day at Voltline Logistics came with no ribbon cutting, no opening speech, no flowers. Just me, a black coffee with no sugar, and the smell of dust in a server room that hadn't been properly cleaned in 2 years. I didn't start by calling a meeting. Instead, I walked through every department. Not to inspect, but to touch each worn-out part of this company like a doctor checking on a patient. Not by measuring vitals, but by looking into their eyes to see what was really wrong. The accounting room had 3 people, 2 printers, and a management software system that hadn't been updated since 2015. The logistics coordination team ran everything on Google Sheets. I stood there watching a young woman named Carla manually type every destination, every truck route, every delivery hour. I didn't interrupt. I just asked, "Do you ever get scared you'll make a mistake?" She nodded, eyes still on the screen. Every day. At the warehouse, I met the night shift supervisor, Joseph, an older man with tired eyes but a steady voice. He said something I'll never forget. They always ask us to deliver on time, in full, but no one ever asks, do your brakes work? Is the road lit? Did you even sleep 4 hours last night? I nodded, didn't say a word. The workday ended at 8 in the evening. I went back to my office, didn't turn on the ceiling lights, just the soft yellow glow from the desk lamp. I opened the financial sheets. The numbers flickered on screen. Losses, withdrawn contracts, 2 months of delayed payroll. Nothing I hadn't seen before, but it still made my stomach tighten. I opened a new Excel file and mapped out the entire operational system. Blue for strengths, and there were only 3 blue cells. The rest were yellow, orange, and red, and one shade of gray for processes that technically existed but hadn't worked in months, ghosts in the machine. That's when a message popped up from Miles. Happy first week. Need more cash? I replied, short. Not yet, but I'll need time. He sent back a thumbs up, the kind of lazy reply I hated, yet somehow found comforting. The next day, I started cutting the dead weight. Not people, not yet, just the pointless spending. Outsourced work with no ROI, unused software licenses, endless repetitive meetings. I focused on 3 things: automation, process transparency, and rebuilding employee trust. I brought in a small local tech firm, CodeSprint, to implement a simple dispatch system. Nothing fancy, no $1,000 ERP, just something that would let Carla stop staying up until 1 in the morning. During the demo, she turned to me, eyes glistening. I didn't think anyone understood how hard my job was. I just nodded. At the warehouse, I proposed a smart shift pilot program, sensors to track load weight, AI-assisted routing to suggest the safest, shortest paths. Joseph pushed back at first. You trying to replace people with machines? No, I said. I'm trying to let the machines handle what you shouldn't have to, so you can finally have dinner with your family. He didn't answer. But the next morning, his whole team showed up on time, 6 a.m. sharp, first time in 2 months. Every night, I went home exhausted, but my mind burned bright, like a flashlight cutting through a tunnel. I took notes on everything, every reaction, every detail. I knew what I needed, not to rebuild Voltline in a week, but to build momentum. Because once momentum starts, the gears will turn. 4 weeks later, Voltline began to show signs of life. A few partners returned. A small contract with an agricultural firm in Kansas was renewed after delivery times improved by 12%. The weekly report had more OKs and fewer delays. I didn't talk much about it. I just stood at the warehouse doorway watching Joseph orchestrate his team like a conductor leading an orchestra. I nodded slightly. He saw it, but neither of us said a word. That evening, as I left Voltline's old building, I turned back. It was raining lightly. The streetlight reflected off the faded sign, the word Voltline barely legible. I stopped, reached into my coat pocket, and pulled out a can of silver spray paint I'd bought that afternoon from a hardware store near the office. One quick spray, right across the last letter. The letter E in Voltline now shone the brightest, and I whispered, just for myself, "From here, we begin again." I thought Calm Seas would last a little longer. We had just closed the first 3 months with our first positive result after 7 quarters of losses. Not huge, only a few tens of thousands of dollars in after-tax profit, but it was real, not dressed up. A number of the 13 people at Voltline had earned themselves. I thought it would buy me time. It did not. In the first week of month 4, Miles sent me a 2-line email. Aether knows. Ethan is looking into it. I needed no more to understand what was coming. The old storm had not died, it had only subsided. Now it was coming back. That afternoon, I got a call from an old contact in Aether's legal team. She would not be explicit. She only hinted that Ethan had called a meeting to review strategic partners in the supply chain. A polite way to say they were looking for a reason to cut Voltline loose. I was silent. Not surprised, just annoyed. I know Ethan. He will not go for a direct attack. He will make you slip. 3 days later, I received a copy of a small industry blog post. Ethan appeared as a guest, talking about ethics in supply chains and conflicts of interest in recent deals between the company and its partners. He did not name names, but the tone was pointed. People in the sector would understand who was being targeted. I did not answer. Not yet. Instead, I kept working, but opened a new tab in my browser, Public Filings for Corporate Share Information in Texas. I began combing through legal minutiae, every clause in Aether's old contracts with Voltline, looking for weak points, for seams, for any place I could stand if the storm hit. One Friday night, while I stayed late to review the company's fixed asset list, Carla came in holding an iPad. "Rebecca," she said, "you should see this." On the screen was a leaked internal email titled Urgent Review of Voltline Shipping Performance. In it, Ethan asked the operations group to pause any new requests with Voltline until transparency and financial stability could be verified. The reason stated, we must ensure our partner is not driven by personal, destructive motives. Destructive, that word made me smile. I collected myself faster than I expected. "Thank you, Carla. Send that file to me." When Carla left, I exhaled. Now it was clear. Ethan did not just know. He was afraid. When someone like Ethan is afraid, he will not fight. He will build fences. He will silence others. He will cast blame and push you into the villain role in your own story. I turned on the desk lamp and opened the old Aether data files. I once ran the top-level coordination in that supply chain. I knew the numbers, the habits, every signed and unsigned decision. And I remembered clearly that last year, Ethan had approved a series of contracts that overvalued raw material storage. At the time, I did not question it. I noted it because I thought he had a strategy. Now I do not think that. I began collecting data, not to attack, but to defend. If Ethan wanted a war, I would not run, but I would not fire the first shot. I would only show him that if he pulled the trigger first, I know how to squeeze the trigger back. That weekend, an email arrived from one of Voltline's 3 largest clients, Clovergrid, a clean energy equipment company in San Diego. Short message. "We have heard Ether may stop working with Voltline. We want to verify this before renewing our contract." This was the first concrete effect. I knew if I did not act, the dominoes would begin to fall. I did not sleep Sunday night. I lay on the sofa, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. I was not angry. I asked myself, how will I play this hand? Fight or continue to build so that growth becomes the answer? Maybe you have been in that place too, where you are treated like a threat, but must stay calm so you do not become exactly what they describe. Then, just before dawn, I sat up, opened my laptop, and typed one line to Miles. "If we need to speak up, I want our voice to ring like a bell, not knock on a door." Monday started with a call from Miles. No greeting, no small talk. "They are naming you in 3 different meetings," he said. I knew who they were, and I was not surprised. The speed at which investors react matches the level of fear in the market. And when my name began appearing alongside the phrase causing supply chain disruption, I knew it had nothing to do with facts, and everything to do with Ethan trying to shove me into the dark, where anything I say is suspected before it is heard. I sat in my office looking at Voltline's delivery network map, the routes colored green for on time, yellow for slight delays, and red for incidents. The red had dropped to 3%, the lowest in the company's history. It did not matter. None of Ether's shareholders cared about an operations map. They cared about the feed where Ethan was shaping a distorted, messy, dangerous version of me. I knew the playbook. I had seen it before at my old company, where a strong performer gets pushed out not for incompetence, but for overshadowing someone else. They will not say it straight. They will drip feed rumors, intentional but hard to trace. They make a tiny crack and let time do the rest. That afternoon, I held an internal meeting with the team. No talk about Ether, no talk about rumors. I said only this: we do not answer with words. We answer with results. They nodded. I saw something light up in their eyes. Pride, maybe, but deeper than that. After the meeting, I walked through the warehouse. Joseph and the crew were reinstalling the new sensors I had ordered last week. I stood in the doorway and watched. Joseph nodded. No words needed. Sometimes a leader's quiet presence weighs more than a speech. That night, I pulled the old backup of the Ether system data I had kept when I worked there. I had it for years, not out of malice, but because I never fully trusted their internal systems. Now it was the final wall between me and the collapse Ethan was trying to build. I found old reports signed by Ethan, small adjustments in pricing and depreciation that looked reasonable one by one, but taken together painted a picture of deliberate internal manipulation. I remembered a meeting last September. Ethan proposed shortening depreciation for storage equipment, citing market pressure for speed. I opposed it and was ignored. Now I understand why. Each tweak pushed short term profits up just enough to nudge stock prices and trigger performance bonuses he stood to gain. I saved everything, encrypted the files, and sent a copy to my private lawyer, Eliza Hart, a razor sharp woman who never asks why, only what outcome you want. Just a precaution, I wrote in the attached email. Do not release. But I want something between me and the sword if it falls. Eliza called 5 minutes later, calm and emotionless, enough to build a file. If he publicly accuses you, I can file defamation and unfair competition suits in 48 hours. Not yet, I said. I do not want to win by litigation. I want to win by existing. The next day, the rumors spread. A reporter contacted Voltline, asking about the alleged personal ties between Voltline's operations chief and certain contracts under question. I did not answer. I let Miles's communications team handle the messaging. They are better at spinning neutral. Pressure still rose. Some partners delayed renewals. A few orders were pulled for last-minute review. Ethan did not need a head-on attack. Scaring others away from associating with me was enough to slowly strangle Voltline. On Wednesday evening, while packing to leave, I received an anonymous message, a single link to a PDF uploaded from a temporary account. It contained internal meeting minutes from Aether. Ethan proposed replacing Voltline entirely with an in-house delivery network to ensure control. I knew it was a lie. Aether lacks the infrastructure to run logistics itself. If they tried, they would lose tens of millions and suffer at least 4 months of disruption. But that did not matter. Ethan did not need to follow through. He only needed people to believe he could. I printed the file, set it on the desk, stared at it, then called Eliza. I need a legal warning sent to Aether, I said, not a threat. Just a reminder that we know what they are doing and that we have the records to prove that removing Voltline would be personal retaliation and unfair competition. Eliza asked one question. Do you want this public? I paused, then shook my head. Not yet. I do not want to win by burning everything down. I want to win because I built something better. A minute later, an email from Eliza arrived. The warning will be sent at 9 in the morning. At the same time, I will draft a letter to the Antitrust Commission, just in case we need a final move. I said nothing else. I stared at the blinking cursor on my notes file, the half-written line. He is playing power, I typed. I am playing. And time does not side with the faint-hearted. I arrived at the office earlier than usual that Friday. Dawn still held its mist. Voltline's headquarters sat quiet in the pale blue light of a morning that had not yet woken. I stopped in front of the company logo wall, where I had sprayed a silver E earlier. Today I looked at it like a friend about to walk into a battle no one else could see. I went inside and made a pot of ginger tea, not coffee. I needed clarity, not adrenaline. Today, I would pull the trigger, not to destroy, but to start. At 9 in the morning, on the dot, Eliza sent the legal warning. A clear statement, not shouting, not threatening. It stated the facts. If cooperation with Voltline were cut based on unverified internal rumors, that could amount to unfair competition under federal law. No one was accused, but everyone was reminded they could become a defendant. At 11:30 in the morning, I received an email from Ethan's office inviting us to a routine dialogue on logistics performance. The subject sounded mild, but the content was clear. They wanted to meet, not to negotiate, but to gauge reaction. The meeting was scheduled for Monday. I had 3 days to prepare. I did not choose instinct. I spent the weekend playing their game: data, language, and calm. I asked our analysts for 3 reports: overall on-time delivery rate for the past 6 months compared to the prior year, Aether's dependency on third-party shipping networks, and a risk simulation if the system were replaced within 90 days. I did not plan to show everything at once, but like a chess player, I wanted pieces in place even if I did not need to move them. Monday morning, I walked into Aether's headquarters for the first time in almost half a year. Everything looked the same. Glass walls, hardwood floors, the faint trail of expensive cologne. But there was one difference. I no longer felt owned by the place. It did not hold me. I had no bitterness left. I saw one truth clearly. I had walked out of that system, and now I returned, not to ask for a place, but to confirm I no longer needed it. The meeting room was on the 24th floor. Ethan sat with three others, a finance director, an in-house lawyer, and Tricia, who used to report to me. She avoided my eyes. I understood. No blame. Ethan was the same. Half smile, pristine white shirt, gray tie. He stood and extended his hand. I shook it. Cold, quick, without feeling. We want an open discussion about recent delivery challenges and communication misunderstandings, he said. Good. I have some clarifications to make, I replied. The meeting ran for 40 minutes. Ethan circled with soft phrasing. We are concerned, customers need clarity, future cooperation needs stability. I did not interrupt. I did not react. I let him finish his script. When it was my turn, I opened a single slide. Voltline's delivery performance chart for 6 months versus the year before. The upward line was unmistakable. We are not underperforming. We are doing better than ever, I said. If Aether decides to end the partnership, that is your right, but that decision must be based on data, not rumors. Ethan tried to speak, but I raised my hand. I am not here to beg for my job. I am here to give you a chance to do the right thing before you let ego sink your system. A minute of silence. No one spoke. Ethan exhaled softly, a sign of someone forced to face an inconvenient fact. The meeting ended with no decision. I did not need one. I only needed to plant a seed. Doubt in the minds of those standing behind Ethan. From there, I knew the movements would begin. 2 days later, CloverGrid, our strategic partner, renewed its contract with Voltline and added a priority routing clause. No explanation required. I knew they had listened and chosen a side. That week, I met with Gerald Finn, CEO of FinTech Distribution, a former Aether client who left after a bad deal. I did not pitch. I simply presented a new pricing plan, quarterly incentives, and a 96% delivery guarantee. Gerald looked over the numbers and at me. You are not here to win back clients, he said. I am here to reset the position, I replied. Do you want to trade with the company that controls the supply chain or the one trying to rebuild it in desperation? He smiled. Welcome back, Rebecca. And then things started to shift. Contracts returned one by one. Trust was rebuilt bit by bit. Voltline did not merely survive. We expanded. I did not have to attack Ethan. I had to exist strongly enough that he could no longer prove I should be cut. Truth has a voice, but results are the only language that power cannot fake. Monday morning, when I walked into Aether's office for the second time that week, the atmosphere felt different. There were sidelong looks in the halls. Phones buzzed in my hands as I passed. Financial feeds teased a leaked story investigating Aether's finances. I entered the conference room on time. Ethan was there, looking worn. The young CEO's face had faint dark rings around the eyes. His in-house lawyer and CFO seemed tense. They looked at each other more than at me. They were puppets fumbling on stage. When the meeting began, Ethan spoke first, his voice softer than usual, edged with worry. We have reviewed Voltline's data and partner feedback, he said. There are several points to clarify before moving forward. I nodded and placed my hand on the folder. No hiding. I'm ready to clarify. Ask. Aether's CFO, a middle-aged man with gray hair, started. We want to know whether Rebecca used Aether's internal data to steer Voltline, and whether the profit increase came from preferential internal deals. I closed my eyes for a beat and remembered. I knew this question would come. I opened the documents Eliza had sent me, copies of reports from before I left Aether. There were timestamps, approver notes, and no alignment with any privileged access I had. I answered. I did not use any unlawful internal data. All Voltline contracts with Aether were completed fairly. If you want, I can show you the bidding records from the past 3 years, the participants, the bids, and the selection rationale. The CFO stared, suspicious but without proof. He turned to Ethan. Do you have anything to add? Ethan stepped back and went quiet. I added, remember I used to sit in meetings like this. but not to beg permission. I helped build the system that made Aether run. Now I am the outsider asking questions of your system. The words landed like a single clear knock. No immediate reply. They circled the legal and governance language, shareholder rights, and procedure. But in each pause, I sensed them wrestling between position and belief. The meeting ended with no firm conclusion. Ethan left quickly, eyes averted. Before the door shut, he muttered, "You will pay for this." I said nothing. I know people who threaten payment when they have nothing left to trade. Outside the building, Eliza called. "The board has requested an emergency meeting on Ethan's fitness to serve as CEO," she said. "They are discussing removal." At that moment, I felt something other than triumph. I felt relief. The invisible weight I had carried for years, the responsibility for systems and operations, was no longer chained to me. That afternoon, the industry news ran, Ethan Whitford, under internal financial investigation. The CEO seat may become vacant for the first time since the company's founding. Partners and investors began calling Voltline to ask if I could step in. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. I did not see a triumphant conqueror. I saw someone who had survived her, passed, and was preparing to walk into an unknown future. I lifted a glass of wine to my lips. The candle on the table burned on. My reflection in the window showed a woman standing between two worlds, behind her the darkness she had left, and ahead the light she had not yet reached. That night, I prepared a resignation letter for Ethan, a document that could be signed once the senior board made their decision. I printed it and put it in an envelope for the boardroom mail. I knew it would be reviewed. I knew it sat in the hands of people who did not want power to remain in the founder's son. Wednesday morning, Eliza emailed. The board approved Ethan's removal effective Friday. His resignation has been signed. I sat motionless, lips loose. Inside, it was not victory, so much as the calm of someone who has borne pressure long enough to know that sometimes winning does not require shouting. On Friday afternoon, I entered Aether's boardroom to witness a historic moment. Empty seats filled with senior leaders. When the chair struck the gavel and declared Ethan Whitford officially relieved of his duties to make way for a transition, I felt the burden lift from my shoulders. Before I rose to leave, I looked toward Ethan as he stood near the exit, drained, stripped of power. I said nothing. I only smiled lightly, a smile without hatred and without gloating. It was a period at the end of a sentence in which my darkest chapter finally moved forward. As others applauded and left, I stayed behind in that room. I placed the resignation letter on the chairperson's desk beside the small gavel. I was not there to strike. I only looked at it. Then I folded the letter back, pocketed it, and walked out. Before I passed through the door, I looked at the board and said, not to them, but to myself, from now on, I belong to no company. I lead contracts, supply chains, and systems, not depend on a name. Then I left the boardroom without a parting bow. I knew I had done my job, turned humiliation into a transfer of power, not through rage, but through strategy. The morning after I left the Aether boardroom, Austin woke under a bright gold sun. The streets were louder than usual. People heading to work, traffic rolling, construction stretching across the boulevard. But to me, the world seemed to tremble slightly because something had shifted. Voltline was no longer the company that lost a contract. It was the company no one could ignore. Partners started calling. New contract emails filled my inbox. I didn't rush to answer them all. I chose carefully. No oversized deals with high risk. I picked quality. I signed 3 modest but strategic partnerships, a solar equipment firm in Arizona, a recycling plant in Nevada, and a lithium battery startup in Colorado. 3 contracts, just enough to prove Voltline wasn't just surviving, it was evolving. The next morning, I woke to a message from Gerald Finn, signed a $10 million contract with Voltline, 12-month incentive plan. He remembered what I'd told him once. I'm not here to ask for partnership. I'm here to reset the position. I smiled, like someone finishing the work she should have done long ago. A week later, Forbes Women interviewed me for a feature titled The Woman Who Turned Humiliation into Innovation. They asked, "How does it feel to be on top after being dismissed like that?" I answered, I don't think I'm on top. I just climbed from the bottom, one step at a time, trying not to let myself fade. If there's a summit, it's the moment you understand your worth doesn't need validation, as long as you don't deny it yourself. They published it. Thousands of shares and comments followed. People called me a symbol, a bold woman in business. But I knew the truth. Symbols are just the surface. What matters is the system, the capability, the way you play when no one is watching. On the day Voltline inaugurated its new headquarters, a glass tower with a new logo reading Voltline, driven by integrity, I walked into the director's office and sat down at my desk. Outside, through the doorway, the team gathered: warehouse staff, software engineers, drivers, coordinators. They smiled. No speeches, just nods, just eyes that understood. I left my office and walked down the glass hallway overlooking the city. Austin stretched beneath me. Car horns, machinery, footsteps. For the first time, I felt part of the rhythm. I was no longer the one being cornered, no longer the one expected to explain. Slowly, I took out my phone and sent a message to Voltline's internal group chat. Thank you for believing, not in me, but in what's right. Moments later came the reply. Thank you for leading the way. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and whispered to myself, I didn't take revenge. I built a path so that when others walk it, they'll know no one has the right to look down on them. I stepped outside into the late afternoon light. The Voltline logo gleamed against the glass. My shadow stretched across the pavement. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew this flow, the supply chains, the partnerships, the green technology would carry the Voltline name, and every contract, every truck, every client would be another brick in the empire I chose to build, not conquer. In the final moment, I looked into the lens, at you, the listener, and thought, if you've ever been called useless, remember, the only useless person is the one who gives up the right to redefine their own worth. Everyone else, like me, can rebuild the world. Before stepping down the front steps of Voltline's new headquarters, where the sunset stretched long shadows across the ground, I paused, not out of hesitation, but because I knew this story, like the journey of anyone underestimated, shouldn't end with a full stop. If you've made it to this part, maybe you've been there too, overlooked, dismissed, called unworthy. And if this story made you think differently about yourself or how you respond, tell me. Leave a comment below and share where you are on your own path. Maybe you're driving home, washing dishes, or sitting quietly in a coffee shop in a city far from home. I want to hear from you. And if you want more stories like this, real ones, raw ones, stories that show how people turn injustice into strength, then subscribe to this channel. Because there are more stories coming, and who knows, one day I might tell yours.